Hi, this is Shawnee Maurice and welcome to Hihu, where we take a look back at landmark games from the past and see how they hold up to current industry trends and standards. Today we look back at Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, released in 2006. The game is argued as the best title in the series before Blacklist. I never played the game upon release, and I've kind of gone backwards in terms of playing the series catalogue. But when compared to modern mechanics, level design and story, how does it hold up 10 years on? Splinter Cell is known as the modern third-person stealth action game set around the Black Ops agent Sam Fisher. Generally, you're given an objective like sneaking into a base, gaining intel, and being extracted from the location. This is the premise of the game. Just know as I start dropping off plot points, I'm getting all this from Wikipedia as I have completely forgotten what has happened. Why? Because the story was that fucking bland, and the game itself was rather forgettable in terms of its level design. There were a few exceptions, and I'll go into that later. Starting off, you're dropped on a beach near a lighthouse, and you're there to recover some guy I don't remember. But the first thing you notice is Sam's face as the moonlight glistens off the water. Just fucking look at it. You play as Steve Buscemi. As you climb the lighthouse, you were introduced to the game's mechanics, and that's when I noticed the first thing that hasn't aged too well, the cover system. It isn't exactly similar to Conviction or Blacklist. I really liked the cover systems in those games. They had a certain fluidity to them. You'd find a cover and all other available cover around you would be accessible by pressing a button. In Chaos Theory, you can only really keep to one cover at a time, thus breaking cover when you want to change the wall you're leaning on. This really shat me to tears. It's not like cover was a new thing back in 2006, sure it really started to gain attention when Gears of War came out later on that year, but that was a different genre. Metal Gear is a stealth series that thrives on its cover system. I just wish this game had more objects that could have been used rather than walls and a few boxes. One really cool thing I noticed early game was a really neat and unique mechanic, and from my understanding, the older Splinter Cells had this mechanic too. And that is the speed at which you walk at is determined by your mouse wheel. Move it forward and you are running but making plenty of noise. Move it backwards and you are quiet and slow. I kind of wish other games had this mechanic too. Just imagine if you could scale your character's walking speed to an NPC's walking speed. The amount of times the character's walking speed was too slow in comparison to the NPCs around you. From World of Warcraft to Skyrim, this would be such a useful fix, even if it was keybound. It's 10 years later, and where is this simple mechanic to be seen? I loved this mechanic, I fucking did, and discovering it has to be one of the most memorable things about playing the game. One thing I noticed about the game's AI was that it had two modes. The fucking dumbass mode, where they'd walk up to you whilst you were in cover, turn their back and allow themselves to be knocked out. The other was Ruthless Ai when combat was engaged. The AI had capabilities of flanking you, especially when in numbers. This really upped the fail state when in combat and you'd die in seconds. The pressure to play stealthy was increased. However, I found whistling to gain attention would instantly spark combat rather than making your enemies investigate the sound. This was very frustrating and made whistling pointless, as it rarely ever worked. But considering how easily the enemies were knocked out and I could easily get through the map, I spent the majority of my time playing this game not finding ways to be stealthy and move around, but it was actually finding where to go. The flag posting in this game has to be some of the worst flag posting I have ever fucking seen. Due to how uninteresting the story is and how fucking bland the banter is, I rarely had any clue as to where I was going. Regardless of objectives, a lot of things were actually hidden. I'm pretty observant when it comes to games. The stealth genre is my favorite, and I consider myself pretty decent at them. I love Dishonored, and I really like Deus Ex Human Revolution. But the thing about those games is I knew where things were, even if I had to discover them. For example, in Dishonored, I'd know that there was a vent close by whenever I saw rats. In Human Revolution, I knew that they liked to hide vents behind boxes and vending machines. In Chaos Theory, they generally hid all the vents in some pretty obscure and impractical places. I'm not just talking about vents, but I'm also talking about the layout of the levels, like extraction points. I'm going to use the 2013 reboot of Tomb Raider for my final point about flag posting. In the game, every interactable item or object that you could jump or climb on had a hint of white to it. Stylistically, this fits so well. I knew I had to climb up a mountain, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. But due to the fast-paced nature of the game, I moved forward and interacted with the white objects to get to my destination. You could say the same thing about Mario's brown boxes that he could jump on, I guess. Now, I'm not asking for this game to have big white vents, but some were legitimately hidden, and they were the key object to progress the level. I'm not an idiot, I don't think this game is too smart for me, I just think this is pretty shit level design. As far as I could tell, there was also no objective screen. I literally rolled my fucking face on the keyboard and couldn't manage to pull anything up. I went into key bindings to see if there was a button for an objectives menu, but alas, I was stuck guessing where I was meant to go and often going to Google to aid me. There were several times where the game said, "Go to your extraction point," and I'd be fucking clueless as to where that actually was, sometimes spending 10 to 20 minutes looking. In terms of the actual levels, none of them were overly memorable either. I remember one mission in Japan or something, and that was pretty cool. I got attacked through paper walls, and that was nifty. But overall, I didn't really feel a connection to the story or the missions themselves. The thing that made Dishonored a great game was that every mission was unique and had their own story to it. There were several ways that you could complete your objective and made the game a lot more enjoyable for it. In Splinter Cell, everything's very linear. Going into buildings to retrieve data and spike a few cell phones isn't exactly interesting. I know I'm not an assassin, but fuck, why did I enjoy Blacklist and Conviction but not Chaos Theory when on paper I'm doing the exact same thing? The game is playable, don't get me wrong, but when you have access to the newer titles, you're better off replaying them rather than putting yourself through this one. Although at Hihu we are reviewing older games, if you haven't played Blacklist or Conviction, please do so. There are a few minor gripes I have with the game also. Surveillance cameras have God mode, you can't shoot them, which is probably the first ever stealth game with indestructible cameras. At least if I shot a camera, send an NPC out to investigate the broken camera. It's not like that type of code would have been impossible to write back in 2006. Now, I'm not quite sure when Ubisoft started to become the company that they are today, but the amount of product placement is pretty hilarious. Computer screens often advertised AMD graphics cards and Nokia phones from 2006. There were cutscenes with Ubisoft blimps and a few other things added here and there. There's even a conversation between two guards about how Prince of Persia is Game of the Year, which is pretty fucking funny considering I'm reviewing it right now, and it's fucking terrible. So just be prepared for the game to try to sell you on discontinued phones. The game goes for about 20 bucks on Steam, but is it worth it? No, that's a ripoff. Even if it was discounted, it'd probably go down to 10 bucks and I probably wouldn't even buy it for that. I checked my game time and I clocked in around 17 hours. Why? Because I got lost and I legit spent my time on Google trying to find out where I was going to go due to how uninteresting the game was. But how's it hold up today? Not well, purely due to the flag posting. Play the newer games. This one fucking sucked. This is Shawnee Maurice from Hihu. Thanks for watching.